The ultimate way out of this war in Ukraine and Europe at large is for Russia to fulfill its long-time dream, to join NATO. The idea of Russia becoming a NATO member has at different times been floated by both Western and Russian leaders, as well as some experts, but no serious discussions were ever held until now. In February 1990, while negotiating German reunification at the end of the Cold War with U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union Mikhail Gorbachev said, "You say that NATO is not directed against Russia, that it is simply a security structure that is adapting to new realities, therefore, we propose to join NATO." However, Baker dismissed the possibility as a dream. During a series of interviews with filmmaker Oliver Stone, President Vladimir Putin told him that he floated the possibility of Russia joining NATO to President Bill Clinton when he visited Moscow in 2000. Anders Fogh Rasmussen, the former Danish prime minister who served as NATO Secretary General from 2009 to 2014, said in 2019 that once Russia can show it is upholding democracy and human rights, NATO can seriously consider its membership. According to Rasmussen, in the early days of Putin's presidency, Putin made many statements that suggested he was favorable to the idea of Russia joining NATO. In response to a March 2009 suggestion by Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski that Russia joins NATO, the Russian envoy to NATO, Dmitry Rogozin, stated that Russia had not ruled that out as a future possibility, but that it instead preferred to keep practical limited cooperation with NATO, adding that Russia wanted to be NATO's partner. In early 2010, the suggestion was repeated in an open letter co-written by German defense experts. In a 2019 interview with Time magazine, Sergei Karaganov, a close advisor to Putin, considers not allowing Russia to join NATO was one of the worst mistakes in political history. It automatically put Russia and the West on a collision course, eventually sacrificing Ukraine. On November 4, 2021, George Robertson, a former UK Labour Defence Secretary who led NATO between 1999 and 2003, told The Guardian that Putin made it clear at their first meeting that he wanted Russia to be part of Western Europe. Putin said, "When are you going to invite us to join NATO? We want to be part of that secure, stable, prosperous West," he said. He told David Frost it was hard for him to visualize NATO as an enemy. All Russia's efforts to join NATO failed and led to a deep frustration. In November 2021, Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that an expansion of NATO's presence in Ukraine, especially the deployment of any long-range missiles capable of striking Russian cities or missile defense systems similar to those in Romania and Poland, would be a red-line issue for Russia. Putin asked US President Joe Biden for legal guarantees that NATO wouldn't expand eastward or put weapons systems that threaten us in close vicinity to Russian territory. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg replied that it's only Ukraine and 30 NATO allies that decide when Ukraine is ready to join NATO. Russia has no veto, Russia has no say, and Russia has no right to establish a sphere of influence to try to control their neighbors. The prelude to the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine occurred with Russia demanding that 1. NATO end all military activity in Eastern Europe and never admit Ukraine as a member. 2. Russia wants a legally binding guarantee to end further eastward expansion of NATO. 3. Russia veto on Ukrainian membership in NATO. 4. The US removes all nuclear weapons from Europe. 5. The withdrawal of multinational NATO battalions from Poland and the Baltics. 6. Russia joins NATO. This was the most important point never stated. Russia joins NATO. Putin said, "When are you going to invite us to join NATO? We want to be part of that secure, stable and prosperous West." A senior Biden administration official later stated that the US is prepared to discuss Russia's proposals with its NATO allies, but also stated that there are some things in those documents that the Russians know will be unacceptable. On 24 February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, quickly becoming the largest conventional military attack on a European state since World War II and turning it into one of the most tense moments between NATO and Russia. NATO member states agreed to supply weapons, but NATO as an organization did not. NATO and its member states also refused to send troops into Ukraine as this would risk a larger-scale war. It is therefore very clear and well stated that the ultimate way out of this purported war in Europe is for Russia to join NATO. Russia must join NATO. To stay on top breaking news, subscribe to